Just because you own your own business doesn't make you a CEO. And let me be clear, I'm not trying to come at you, because I think anybody that took the risk to go off on their own and has built themselves a roster of clients that pay them to do what they are good at deserves enormous kudos. But I've had enough conversations with business owners to know that there is a frustrating point where you're making money and you're busy, but you feel like you traded your 9 to 5 or 8 to 8, depending on where you worked on, for 24/7. Yes, you're technically in charge and you can technically work when you want, but the reality is it feels like you're always behind on something, or you're overwhelmed with the interest that you're getting from clients and you feel like you're letting things slip through the cracks, or you're just feeling like the way that you've gotten to this point in your business just isn't working anymore now that you've got this level of client workload to deal with, even if you're incredibly thankful to have the client workload that you do. And I think this was really important to talk about because there's a ton of glamorizing of start a small business, build a business online on the internet. And while these things are amazing opportunities for many people, I think it's one of the best ways to get money in the hands of women and minority groups especially. Just deciding to open a small business does not necessarily mean that you are truly operating as a chief executive officer. You can make amazing money running your small business, working 20 hours a week from your villa in Bali, but the reality is that's not what it looks like for most business owners. Even if you technically have that LLC set up, there's still a very real possibility, if any of this has resonated with you, that your reality looks more like being a well-paid independent contributor at a bunch of other companies versus being the true CEO of your own. So in this video, I'm going to talk through an exercise you can do to tell if you are really in employee or CEO mindset, why it matters to start showing up as a CEO for your future potential, and where you can start shifting in your business today to start getting you more into CEO mode. And if we haven't met, I'm Samantha. I'm a 2-time small business owner and an ops and systems consultant for coaches, creatives, and other service-based business owners who want to get their time back without compromising their revenue. Because at some point, you can't work more hours or charge more for your services or bring in more clients without the systems breaking down or you reaching some physical or mental breaking point. And at that point, you've hit the ceiling of where your sort of employee earnings have topped off. And when you're your own boss, you don't have a big boss to go up to ask for a raise, to ask to value you more, or the ability to go to a competitor to try to increase your earnings based on valuing your skills differently. When this happens, it is my deep belief that the solution is not just to work harder, and it's not necessarily to build scalable products. If you want to hear more on my thoughts about that one, you should check out this video here. And the solution isn't even always to hire an employee. Sometimes that's the right call. But to figure out what's right for you will require you to be able to step into the shoes of a true CEO. But before we dive in on how to start making that shift, first let's identify where you are on the continuum between employee mindset and CEO mindset. Employees tend to focus on executing individual tasks, whereas CEO tend to focus on the overall ROI of a group or set of tasks as they get done. Employees tend to be focused on hitting goals, like those sales numbers that you're aiming for, or the amount of views on a post. But CEOs focus on if goals are returning results, if that number is actually leading to you taking home the amount of money that you want, or if those views are converting to the level of discovery calls and client bookings that you expect. Employees tend to identify problems. CEOs identify problems and then identify the solution. Employees prioritize short-term client satisfaction because that's usually what they're getting evaluated on, whether the client was happy this month or this quarter. Whereas CEOs focus on long-term growth, like what types of clients will be able to scale with the company, what's mapped towards the larger business goals. And this may mean that certain clients may have some short-term dissatisfactions with a price raise or the change in the way business is operated, but they see towards the long term. Employees react to what other people tell them are important, and CEOs decide what's actually important, even if that's unpopular. For an employee, somebody else evaluates their performance. In a corporate setting, this is your boss at a year-end review, but for many solopreneurs acting like employees, whether or not a client reviews or the metrics on your social media can feel like somebody else giving you a performance report. CEOs not only evaluate their own performance on their own metrics, but they are actually spending more time evaluating other people's performance, whether that's their contractors, their clients, or their audience, to see if it's playing out the way they want. Employees tend to focus on the next 3 to 12 months, while CEOs focus on the next 1, 3, 5, 10 years. Employees tend to view their time in terms of hours or days, whereas CEOs view their time in terms of the return that they can get from an amount of time or the leverage that a certain activity gives them. Employees are judged by what they produce with that time, whereas CEOs are judged by their decision making, not about what they produce at all. And as a result, employees tend to be compensated for their time or output. CEOs are compensated for the results that time and output yields for the company. But if all of this feels a little theoretical, let's talk through a couple of examples. Our first example is a graphic designer. They had freelance clients on the side of their corporate job and eventually had enough interest to be able to go solo. And they're now making multiple six figures. They pitch projects on a flat rate based on how big the scope is. Recently, they had a client challenge their rates, so they took a 10% reduction because the project was only 10 deliverables. They're trying to post more on social media to promote the business because that's what everybody says is important, but it often falls behind their client work. Based on the comparison, does this person seem to you more to be an employee or a CEO? If you said employee, I would generally agree. While this person technically runs their own business, a lot of their decision making is based on the evaluation of others, short-term decision making, what other people say is important versus the things that actually deliver results. Now let's look at example number 2. This person is a mindset coach. She takes on max 4 to 6 clients at a time on long-term packages because this is what's led to the best client results and also her best quality of life. She promotes her business on email marketing because that's where she saw the highest conversion rate. And on the flip side, she got off social media last year because the amount of time it was taking to be there wasn't matching up with the results of her time spent other places. She spent a couple weeks earlier this year building automations and Claude skills that help streamline some processes for her, like bookkeeping, data capture, and now she can spend a couple of hours each week evaluating these numbers and making strategic decisions on things like what content she wants to produce next, any changes to her marketing tactics, and how she's managing her money moving forward. As a result, she's currently thinking about investing more in her VA over the next couple of months so that she can outsource certain tasks to be able to invest a little bit more in some strategic initiatives around her email marketing strategy. Which one do you think this example falls in? I think it's pretty obvious that this is much more of a CEO mindset, even though both of these people are solopreneurs, don't have major teams. One is thinking short term, the other long. One is valuing their time and the other is valuing their output. But here's the thing. Being in CEO mode is definitively harder because it asks you to think for the future. It asks you to make educated guesses and take strategic risks, like bringing in support to help you scale or committing to one marketing platform and letting the rest of them go. So why would you bother if the things that you've been doing right now have been delivering decent amounts of client work and revenue for you? The first reason why shifting into CEO mode can be incredibly impactful is because of the greater earning potential. If you can 3x or 10x the amount that you're making in the same amount of time, that gives you enormous amounts of flexibility both in your business and professional life. CEO mode can also deliver greater time freedom because thinking like a CEO can make it so that you can deliver the same amount of revenue in less time, giving you valuable hours to spend with your family, on your health, or whatever is important for you. CEO thinking can improve your client experience, where you have the same clients but they're happier because the experience is more professional or they get their deliverables faster. And better client experience means it's easier to raise prices or get more referrals or upsells, which can lead to those first two of greater earning potential and more time freedom. And thinking like a CEO can lead to more stability and predictability in your revenue because especially those lumpy businesses like consultants or coaches know that there can be periods of time with lots of earning and then slow periods. And if you're thinking like a CEO, you get more clear and confident on what levers lead to shifts in your revenue and your expenses. And over time, you get more confident making investments based on what they're going to yield because of the level of clarity and strategy that you've built into your business. So if you want to do this, you are probably asking yourself, okay, great, now where do I start? The first thing is very unsexy, but if you are not already, you're going to want to be capturing and documenting the tasks and processes that you do in your business. This is the first step to understanding where you're losing your time throughout the day and which things are sucking great amounts of energy, mental drain, or the budget in your business. You have to think about this like a CEO of a 1,000-person company would look at the departments or the teams. It's not just about what are they generally focused on, like marketing, but what are the actual initiatives that they are spending their time and then reporting back to you, oh, hey, here's our marketing results at the end of the month. Then the second area to focus on is to begin to build the muscle of forecasting or planning for the future. This applies even if you are in one of those lumpy businesses like consulting, even though it can feel a little harder for a business owner like you. This is because these exercises of determining where the money's coming from, where it goes to, what leads to it, helps you make every kind of decision, from hiring, investing in resources like consultants, or new software systems, whether to launch a new product or shift your business model. These decisions will always feel unclear if you don't have a handle of what the numbers were in the past and what you think the numbers are going to be in the future. And this can take some time and muscle memory to build. So I highly recommend you start working on this early. If you're curious more about what this looks like, because I talk a ton more about it in another video here. And then finally, you want to implement some regular reviews of the efficiency of your business. This is almost impossible to do if you haven't begun that first recommendation of beginning to capture and document processes. But these monthly or weekly reviews can help you identify opportunities for efficiency, like cloud skills or automations, or when it might be time to bring in somebody to help take some things off your plate. But all that probably sounds good and fine, and then you're saying to yourself, I would love to do all that, but the whole reason that I'm here is I don't feel like I have time. And this is where your first major action as thinking as a CEO is coming into play. Your first responsibility in order to give yourself the time to do these sort of long-term investments in your business is to do a hiring and firing exercise. Look at all the things that you're doing right now and identify if there are projects that you're working on or tasks that you do on a daily or weekly basis that you can't point to the return that they are delivering back to your business, how they are contributing to revenue or growth or your own sanity. It might be time to fire that employee, even though that employee is just a part of your to-do list. To be clear, firings can be reversible. So it may be time to take 3 months off of, say, posting on Instagram stories if it doesn't seem to be yielding to any clients and it's taking you hours a week that you really want to spend investing in these larger systems. And again, if you aren't already beginning to capture and assess the tasks and initiatives that you are working on, this may feel a little harder than if you've already begun that recommendation I made earlier. Now, if you've identified areas that you would like to hire for in your CEO mindset, I would strongly encourage you to take a pause before you hire for anything that is in the category of execution support. For a lot of small business owners, this looks like a VA. And if you're not familiar as much in the distinction between coaches, VAs, and consultants, I have another video where I dive in way more into the details there. But I would caution you before hiring people that are more focused on execution like VAs first, because if you don't have fairly refined systems built up, the amount of immediate time that you're going to be able to get back from this person, I find is much lower than most people think. It's super common to underestimate the amount of training and directions that these people built, and I know how common it is because I hear from people all the time how they've been burned from hiring support before. So before you think about hiring somebody to help you execute, I would focus on identifying what type of support you want to hire in the metaphorical sense of where would you like to allocate your time that you think can yield a bigger return. Now, that doesn't mean you have to do this all on your own, because step 3 gets into a more literal format of hiring, but again, not as much in the execution mode. I'll be honest, this next one is a biased recommendation, but my final recommendation would be a more literal version of the term hiring, which is to bring in somebody that can help you build systems that you will continue to run solo. But by having somebody who specializes in building systems and who has done this for a lot of other business owners, they not only save you the time of getting the systems built first, but they're likely to build systems that are going to function more effectively than if you had to trial and error your way into it. We commonly do these types of engagements in Excel, and we call them bottleneck breakthroughs, because they're meant to be a short-term breakthrough, and then we can hand it back to you for you to run the system. Once these systems have more repetitions underneath their belt, you really trust that they're working more efficiently, and you know that it's got built into it a bulk of instructions that could more reasonably hand off to a junior level employee without relying as much on their decision making. Then you can address that more execution support level of hiring. Because one of the strongest skills of a CEO is knowing when it's time to invest in somebody that has skills that you might not have. And so if you know that that is you, that you don't have the time or the skill set to DIY systems building, I have a link available down in the description below for you to learn more about how I might be able to take some stuff off your plate by getting these systems built more effectively. And if you liked anything about this video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit subscribe down below. And with that, I'll see you in the next one.